Hello and welcome back to O'Day and Night. I'm your host, Adam O'Day. Today I've got a pretty great podcast for y'all. I'll be talking about some potential landing spots for DeAndre Hopkins since he was released yesterday, and my prediction for the rest of the NHL playoffs. First up, DeAndre Hopkins. I've identified 4 teams that he could possibly sign with where he would be our great receiving option. First off is the Cowboys. Granted, they did add Brandon Cooks this offseason via trade with Houston, I believe, and they do have CeeDee Lamb as well, but the rest of their receiving room, they're solid at best. Like Michael Gallup right now is listed as their wide receiver 3, and I'd gladly move Brandon Cooks to wide receiver 3 and have CeeDee Lamb at wide receiver 2, DHop at wide receiver 1. So, really all 4 teams I've identified have, less than ideal receiver rooms, but I believe the Cowboys right now, without DeAndre Hopkins, have the best receiving room. Next up is the Bills. Outside of Stephon Diggs, their receiver room just isn't very good. Their other 2 starting receivers are Gabe Davis and Khalil Shakur. I'm taking DHop over, really all 3 of those guys. He did only have 700 yards this past season, but Hopkins missed the first few games, so I'm taking him over Stephon Diggs even. Granted, Diggs is great. He's a great receiver. I'd take him any day of the week, but, D-Hop's just too good. And next up, I have the Chiefs. They did win the Super Bowl, but like with the Bills and the Cowboys, their receiver room is not great. Their 3 starters are Marquez Valdes-Scantling, Kadarius Toney, and Sky Moore. They seriously need an elite receiver, and I don't believe any of those 3 guys are elite. Their offense was just out of this world when they had Tyreek Hill, but he's with Miami now, so I'd much rather have the Chiefs pick up D-Hop and, have their offense just take that next step into being just dominant again. And finally, we have the Jets. They have the reigning Offensive Rookie of the Year with Garrett Wilson and a new QB in Aaron Rodgers. But just like with all these teams, their receiver room just isn't very good. And, they're the Jets. It's really hard to find a position where, they don't need an upgrade. So, D-Hop, you could plug him in right away and he'd immediately be a great mentor to Garrett Wilson, and he'd easily be able to produce at a high level with an all-time great QB in Aaron Rodgers. Now, next up, I have the NHL playoffs. Florida Panthers in the conference finals swept the Hurricanes, so they are moving on to the Stanley Cup final. And now, tonight, the Vegas Golden Knights take on the Dallas Stars. Vegas has a 3-1 lead, and, I see Vegas winning tonight, moving on to play the Panthers, but I believe the Panthers will beat whoever they end up facing in the Stanley Cup Finals. This Stars and Golden Knights series, 3 of the 4 games so far have gone to overtime, with Vegas winning 2 of those 3 overtime games. But, I just see the Panthers coming out on top. towards the end with how much rest they've gotten. They haven't played since Tuesday. And with how long this series has gone so far, Game 5 is tonight, and with how many overtime games there have already been, I just don't see Dallas or Vegas knocking off Florida more than once or twice.